And we're live streaming from Founders Park in historic Ocean Grove, New Jersey. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and we're delighted that you can join us for our unique podcast community, where we explore the triumphs and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for helping us grow as a podcast community. We recently hit 1,435 subscribers today, which is wonderful. Please remember to subscribe and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. We love it when our community likes and shares our videos because it helps us grow. To see our over 158 past episodes, go to our website at www.jasontram.net. Again, that's www.jasontram.net. We have a wonderful guest today. We've got renowned French conductor Pierre Vallet, who is a frequent guest at the world's great opera companies, including the Metropolitan Opera, where he has a long-standing association, first as a pianist and coach, and later joining the roster of staff conductors. The l'Opéra Nationale de Paris, Dallas Opera, Opera Theater St. Louis, Tokyo Opera, and the Bolshoi, to name a few. His symphonic work includes regular appearances with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in London, the Camerata Royale in Bucharest, the Philharmonic Brașov in Romania, the St. Petersburg Philharmonic, and the list goes on and on. He's recorded 3 CDs with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and Elizabeth Sombart. The Chopin Piano Concertos, a collection of favorite adagios of piano concertos, and the complete piano concertos of Beethoven. His recordings of the Beethoven Concertos 1 and 2 was nominated for the 10 best recordings released in the celebration of Beethoven's 250th anniversary by Classic Music magazine. He's also an acclaimed pianist performing recitals with some of the world's leading singers, including Natalie Dessay, Maria Gulagina, Denise Graves at the White House, Dmitry Chvorstovsky, Roberto Alagna, the Vienna Staatsoper, Joyce DiDonato, and the list goes on and on. We're delighted you can join us today. Welcome, Pierre.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Maestro, thank you so much for spending time with us today. You just told me offline that you just did a concert last night. Tell us about that.
So I discovered that I could be useful by playing, as you know, a pianist, playing for good causes. So last night it was the charity event online for Project Renewal. My husband, Eric Rosenbaum, is the CEO. And Project Renewal deals with a lot of homeless people and caring for them, creating all kinds of services, health services, counseling services, drug services, and also providing shelter as well as low-income housing. So it's a very beautiful cause, and I was very happy to be associated with it.
Thank you for sharing that because it's so important. Part of the pandemic that's been the aftermath is this homeless crisis we're seeing, and I think that's so important that we take care of this population. And music's got that ability to heal and to transform lives.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I also did for some of the low-income housing, the assisted living concerts online on Zoom. It was really interesting. My first concert, I had a mic on the piano and my iPhone there, and that's all for public. And there I was, explaining the pieces I was about to play and playing them, and with no reaction. It felt a little bit strange, but from the feedback, I understand it was well received, and it was wonderful to carry across the internet to people's heart.
It's amazing that we can use this new technology. Who would have thought that 15 years ago that this was even a possibility? Thankfully, we have this advances in telecommunications. It's not the same thing, but at least it's something where we can share our gifts to make life better.
Yeah, it's amazing what we all had to learn how to use. What was Zoom? I have no idea when someone said the Met called for a Zoom meeting back in March of 2020, and I thought, what is that? How do I do this? I called my colleagues frantically. What is this? What is that? Then when I work at the Met Young Artist Program, and as well as the Washington Young Artists Program, and so they went online. And so, how do you coach online? And for an entire year, all I played really is the introduction of arias and and a few notes in between, because I couldn't hear the person when I was playing, and they couldn't hear me, so they were late, and I was ahead of them, as well as I probably haven't heard a high note in an entire year, because all I could hear is at the top. Really. But so Still, I think good work was done. People made progress. We learned a lot of things. I did some classes for the Lindemann as well. I coached in Tokyo. I coached in Hong Kong. I coached in
All
Paris.
from your living room or your studio.
From my living room. So now that now that I've learned how to do it, and also I bought a little bit of equipment, I'm sort of enjoying it in some ways as well.
Very different experience, certainly.
Yes.
I taught university courses and lectures, and I ran rehearsals via Zoom and via Skype, and it's amazing what you can accomplish when you really put your mind to it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I always
Well,
say that during the COVID period, we've all become philosophers in a way because we've had
yes.
so much more time to think.
Yes.
What are some things some innovations and self discoveries you've made about yourself during this period?
Well, so as I said, the period was not all great for me. I mean, it started really by I was in London in March. I was doing my second promotional concert with the RPO, and we were playing the second piano concerto. We had two concerts, one in Crawley and one in London proper. So we did the one in Crawley, and I conducted the Beethoven Pastoral. And then we were supposed to go there at Cadogan Hall in Sloane Square and do another concert where I was playing a Mozart symphony. And that transitioned 2 days where the producer was saying, should we cancel or not cancel? Because the news was coming and was really intense and nobody really knew what was going on and what kind of chaos. And suddenly it was decided that the venue was going to close and that the frontiers were going to close as well. And so I better go to New York as quickly as possible. So I packed that night after the decision was taken at 11 o'clock. I went online, booked myself, changed my flight back to New York, and arrived. And so it was extremely frustrating to leave London, not having done the second concert, and also not knowing what was going on. And we were talking about what was going on and the virus, but and France, the Europeans were going to be quarantined, but not the British people because they were not part of the Schengen, whatever it was. I mean, it's a complete chaos. And on the plane going back to New York, tons of Europeans. Well, I was in Greece, I was in Rome, and I was here, all the places that I had closed down and went on lockdown just before London. It was really very, very intense for me. And so I arrived and I got sick. So I thought maybe this was COVID. My doctor said, nothing to worry about, just take ibuprofen and you'll be fine, because there was no way of testing, no way of saying anything. And
Isn't that interesting? At the beginning of COVID, nobody knew. I got ill as well. I just had, flew like for a day and then
yeah,
I was fine.
yeah,
But there was no tests back then. It was the very
yeah,
beginning of this. I had a student of
yes.
mine in my class who had it in Seton Hall, and I got over it. I think one of my sons had a little bit of it, less than I did, and then life went on. But we just didn't know.
Yeah, yeah. So there was this period of, oh, okay, what's going on? Am I sick? Am I not sick? What am I supposed to do? The Met was closing for just 15 days, and everything was going to be fine. And then so I was my contract was starting right on March 20th or something. So that was fine. It was only delayed, and then we waited, and then a Met meeting. No, it's longer. Then the season was cancelled, and all of that was going on. So for the first month, it was chaos. And as I was explaining to you, my mother is in Paris, and she was beginning to sink into Alzheimer. And I had organized before leaving all kinds of helps and set up appointments, hospital, daycare, this and that, and the other. And one after the other, they were calling me to say, "I'm sorry, we have to stop." And so I was really terrified, imagining my mother was going to simply, die in the apartment, and I was going to come home and find bones and flesh on the floor. So fortunately, a friend of mine took over and brought food to my mother every single day. So I am blessing this woman forever in my life.
A real
And then
hero.
yeah, and so then that gave me the idea that many of my older friends needed help. So I started doing the same thing. So I did regular shopping sprees at Zabar's and Fairway, and bring the food to this person and to that person, and being their relay to real life. I mean, this lady, this wonderful friend of mine, hasn't left her apartment in an entire year. for fear of catching it. An entire year, I was the only outside presence in her life, bringing her food and so on.
COVID has brought us so many stories like this of humanity.
Mm,
And
mm.
when we were in our normal, crazy, hectic lives, we wouldn't have had time to go shopping at Zabar's for other people. I'm sure that
Yes,
wouldn't have been ahead of this question for you with your schedule. So
totally.
thank you for sharing that. That just shows the humanity we've all had to kind of think about these things and think about other people.
Yeah, and so this was and so also so when you finally decided that okay, so this was it, that all the concert tours and my debut at the Czech Philharmonic and the Dis Philharmonic and this all of that going okay, fine. So eventually you decide to give up, but there is still season 2021 to look forward to.
So
I'm
describe
sure.
the. I've been through 150 or so different artists, and I think we all went through some sort of depression because it's impossible when you set up all this work and you've got it booked and you worked with your agent and you book years in advance to schedule your
Yeah,
time so you can be there for a month or weeks or whatever it is,
yeah.
and then to watch it fall apart. How do you deal with that? How do you find the energy to start planning down the road?
Well, I had a very, between the anxiety of my mother and between, the watching because it was not total, you still held on to hope that no, but this concert is not going to be cancelled. In June, it's going to be fine, or this is, and eventually, when you realize that indeed this was real, and this is not a joke, and it was going to last for a long time, I suddenly had a very big dip indeed, thinking, what now? What do you do now? And it's unbelievable to observe your life because all I've done for the last 30 years is quickly do this, quickly learn that, quickly go there, come back, immediately set up something else, learn this symphony, go do it, and then come back, and then watch this, and then do this. And so all you did is this kind of ongoing um, wheel of life and work, and you think it's absolutely normal, and you thrive on it, and you love it, and it's exciting and gives you a sense of purpose, and you travel to places and eat different food and meet wonderful people, different orchestras and so on and so forth. And suddenly all of that stops and you realize there's this energy inside of you that doesn't know what to do with itself.
So, what did you do with yourself? How did you occupy your time? I'm always fascinated by the creative minds of the creative people.
Yeah. So I don't know whether I was that creative. I felt first I needed to attend to my physical wellness. So I to ask my trainer to do Zoom on that. So we bought some weights. We have plenty of weights now, and we started exercising online, and that was really wonderful. Contact, human contact, a regular schedule. I realized that regular schedule, when the schedule is made for you from the outside, it's very difficult to create your own schedule. So I started making really a schedule. Then I decided that since the only way to make music was to play the piano, I was going to really study, but this time solo pieces. And so I decided to study all the pieces that I wanted to study and that were, the best of, so the Chopin.
Give us some examples.
So I learned, I've always wanted to learn the Clair de Lune, by Debussy. So I did that. Learned waltzes by Chopin. Then I learned some Polonaise, di da 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 di da di da di, and other things. Prokofiev, the March of the Three Oranges, and so on and so forth. I really just like the best of the big hits. I've always wanted to do them, and in my schooling in Paris, if you approached something too popular, you were frowned upon. It had to be either Messiaen, or Boulez, or Stockhausen if you wanted to be considered a serious musician. So I gave myself this pleasure, and lo and behold, I didn't realize that this pleasure was going to be then transferred by to other people, and this is where when I'm moving. I'll speak about that if you want a bit later. And then I decided to also you have to cook for yourself. It's amazing how many times we go to restaurants and cafes and eat quickly and never cook. So I relearned how to cook and to cook healthy, and so that was fun, and we cooked a lot. And then I would bring leftovers to my friends. I learned how to make a lemon tiramisu. I highly recommend it. It was fabulous.
I think you share the recipe of the chat feature.
Yes, I will. And lots of people really loved it. So I learned how to cook for myself again and for us and for others, and started, so since it was Beethoven years that was supposed to be celebrated, the poor guy suffered a lot with all these performances that were canceled on him. It was terrible. And so I decided I was going to really study again the quartets, so all the quartets I studied and listened to them, and it gave me great solace to study that, and it deepened my relationship to the Beethoven I was supposed to perform, maybe,
I
so
always
deep.
study the quartets that are around the symphonies I'm working on. I always
You see,
find
you
you
see.
see the germs in there, like
Exactly, exactly. Quartetto Italiano was the recording I listened to,
mm,
and I, so I did that, and then when finally things were, you were able to travel, because for a while you were really not able to travel. I jumped on a plane and decided to see my mother. That was early June, and there turns out that my mother had really, because of the isolation, really, really gone deep into Alzheimer's. So now it was time to actually find a nursing home because she couldn't do it on her own. And also, the dangers. I mean, the number of times she was robbed, by people coming into her home, and so on and so forth. So it was just real time to go for that. And she was ready, which is also the problem, when you're not ready to go somewhere because you still can manage, it's an uphill battle. So I extended my stay in Paris and decided to select a nursing home. So we went with my aunt and we viewed 12 nursing homes, and eventually we selected one. She was accepted. She liked it. And on the last week she was settling down, so I extended again my stay to make sure that she settled properly. And there was a piano in the dining hall. So every night I decided to play for her, and I realized, and so suddenly other people came and joined, and suddenly I realized the impact. So something that I'd done for my own pleasure actually turned out to be huge on these residents. Some all of them knew da da dee, da dee, da dee, da, da. So I had this woman who was not quite together, and she sat next to me and sung dee da dee ba da ba da dee da dee da da dee da da da. And I was so moved by that. I realized that I know I have an impact on the public, but the public is far away. But somehow the public here was around me and real, not going, not uh, experts that were going to judge my performance or say, that tempo was not that great, or maybe he should have done this or that and the other. But people who just the sheer act of playing music, of hearing music, was really, really powerful. And so I subsequently went, 4 times, to because my mother was really not getting on well. And so the last trip was literally a month ago. I was there, and there was a new resident who was German. And so when I decided to play the Pathétique for her, and the moment I played dom da dim da da dum, she burst into tears.
mm.
And so every night, because I ate every night with my mother, she came and I played different things. And then I was in touch with her daughter, and I said, your mother is always present at the concert, and she really is so moved by it, by the music, by being alive. So she said, I'm coming, I'm coming. So she came one night, and then she said, my mother is singing O Sole Mio in German. Could you find the music? I said, of course, IMSLP. We all have used IMSLP 100 million times.
It's my
So
favorite website.
exactly, they are heroes, really. And so here, see, it is. So I came the next day with dom da da dee dee da da da, and I realized she was not singing. So I said to myself, well, let me just do it. I'm a coach. So with my little voice, I will do. So here, doch eine Sonne will ich zu da. And she exploded in tears.
Mm.
Her daughter exploded in tears because she had never seen her mother alive this way. I exploded in tears. I mean, the meaning, I mean, suddenly you realize that it is not for pleasure, it's not for beauty, it's not for ego, it's for healing. You play music. It really is for that. And when you are a listener at the New York Philharmonic, you realize it's wonderful, it's great, but it's still kind of an intellectual sort of journey. But for them, it was a life awakening in some ways. So then I was
We
asked,
need music now more than ever, and
yes,
that population of people you're playing for needs music to connect to their humanity. I
yes,
love the stories about how people who with Alzheimer's, who some of them can't even talk, when they hear music, they
yes.
recognize the music. It's a different part of the brain, so it kind of it affects them on a deep, deep level.
Yes, so these people who were brought about in a wheelchair, and most of them arrived like this, and so and suddenly you could see that something was awakened, and at some point this woman said, "Well, no, can you sing something else?" And I thought, well, no, but so I decided to again IMSLP and other websites, and I brought in Edith Piaf, La Vie en Rose, Barbara Göttingen. I brought in Seit ich ihn gesehen, glaube ich blind zu sein, and so on and so forth. And suddenly, even my mother, who has basically lost most of her memory, suddenly when I say dès qu'il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, every one of these people were talking. I was in tears. They were singing
Mm.
all the words. So that for me is the most powerful experience that COVID gave me. I would never have done that. Never, 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 ever have done that.
That's quite inspirational, and someone who's made music at the highest level for 30 years to share your music in the most elemental way.
Yeah.
How will that affect how you make music going forward?
Well, so I have decided to develop my voice. Whatever I have, I decided to really work. So I was doing a masterclass for the Abbaye de Sylvanès in Montpellier last month and a half. And so I asked the guy Michel Folkowski, who's a wonderful teacher, to give me voice lessons. So I've taken that. I'm going to pursue that in New York as well with some of my friends and colleagues. And I'm also going to learn how to vamp at the piano, something that I've never done in my classical repertoire. And it's very exciting. I have, I'm
Some Broadway
yeah,
advice there.
of course, and of course I'm going to be, going all gender, like the way we were, or all kinds of things, and suddenly this other person said, "Oh, okay, let's do some jazz and so on and so forth." So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it.
Isn't that what's so special about music? Is a limitless growth possibility.
Mm,
Even though when you've worked your whole life in it, there's so much more to learn.
yeah. And so I had a wonderful colleague, Laurie Hamilton, who was the one of the concert masters at the Met, and so we decided to also on a project to do since it was Beethoven years and I was deep into it, to do all the violin sonatas by Beethoven. So we got together for the first time, a few months ago, and it was incredible to do live music again. Incredible, with masks and everything, but. It was just absolutely amazing, just to, yes, it was okay to do Zoom, and I'm sure, you've done a lot of, you said, choral work and conducting work, but it's the human contact. And I had never realized that, never realized, I mean, of course I knew it, but I never realized how deep the impact is. When I came back, I did another trip in around Christmas, and I came back then to start. I had a small contract at the Juilliard School, and they had wanted me to do it sort of live in with people, and with the singers and the pianist, and it gave me like almost my life back to have real musicians. Do you know what I mean?
So special because that's what we do is we make connections with people. It's not
Yeah.
just making music, it's the connections, and we share that humanity together. That's what's been missing the most. The
Yes.
Zoom screen doesn't transmit as much of that. That's
No.
what, you can do learning, you can do coaching, but the actual inspiration we draw from each other that's the thing that I've missed the most.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so some people were afraid. I think that the big houses, we're going to reduce the orchestra, we're going to, do synthetic sort of recordings and this and the other. And the public, you go to your religious service online and people were going to sort of think, oh, yeah, let's do that. But no, we realized how much we miss people. Someone chatted in one of a service that I attended. I missed so much people, even the people I really hate seeing, I missed them. That's so
Them the
funny.
most.
Them the most, yeah.
So, did you always know you wanted to be a musician? Did you grow up with music? Did you grow up knowing you wanted to be an artist professionally?
Knowing, no, I wanted to play the piano desperately, desperately, and my father was not very keen for me to do that. And so one day we had a friend who was a pianist, and so we went to ski, and she had rented a small piano in the chalet, and so she put me in front of the piano, and she said, "Learn this." And she sat next to me, and it was from the Mikrokosmos, Biela Bartok, and I stayed there apparently 6 hours, and I didn't want to leave. I was 5, didn't want to leave at all, and um, and when my parents came back from skiing, she said it would be a crime not to give this child piano lesson. It would be a scandal. You must give him piano lessons. So it started this way. So my
Were your
sheer
parents musicians?
no, my father was a petroleum engineer, my mother was a writer. But my father had played the piano like all good boys, played a little bit of piano, a little bit of violin, and abandoned it, very early on. But so the piano arrived, and that was it, That was, and then, I was so in love with it, and I wanted, so all I did is play the piano, so in the dark hours when I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing in this profession? Why have I done this to myself? I can only blame myself. Some people can blame their parents, which is great, but I can only blame myself.
Yeah, we do make that choice eventually, right?
Mm.
That's a choice that calls you.
Yes,
It's
yes.
just you have to do this and go and follow that passion and that dream. And that dream took you to the top conservatories in Paris.
Yes, l'école normale. And then I went to Geneva to work with someone. Then I moved to Germany to work with Celi Bidake and Edith
We have to talk about Chalibadaki and
Axenfeld.
this phenomenology. So tell
Yes,
me about he's one of my favorite conductors, of course, and I've
yes, of
watched all
course.
the videos that exist on YouTube, and I'm still fascinated by his
Fascinating.
control and his philosophy.
Yeah. Well, so strangely enough, so I got to Celi Bidake from thanks to Elisabeth Somba. Celi was, I think, a distant cousin of some sort,
Hmm.
and she took me. So I met Elizabeth in Salzburg. I was doing a summer academy there. She was one of the pianists as well, and we really hit it off. And we stayed in touch. And at some point, she calls me and she said, "You must come to Germany. You must study with him." So we were in the same class together, and we studied, and it was absolutely awesome. And actually, I want to say that the other thing that I did, and with Elizabeth, because there were no more concerts, so we decided that we were going to create a website with all the master classes she's given to pianists in the last 20 years. So I am in charge with her of creating this website, and there she will put in all her teaching on phenomenology. And all her conferences, she did conferences in Paris, in Rome, in Spain. So I'm putting all of these on the website, and it's going to be really a fantastic source of teaching about the phenomenology, particularly applied to the piano, because we think of him really with a conductor. But I played for him a couple of times, and he was doing music, not piano. He was making music. So that I'm excited about it. It's been, so I did a couple of trips as well to Switzerland, and we worked on that for a long time. And so that gave me another big focus
Hmm.
to work on. And so the website is coming out early November. I'm excited.
Well, people have to share that when it comes out because that's really
Yes.
interesting and a fascinating man. What was he like to work with as an artist and a person?
Okay. Imagine imagine meeting, I don't know, Liszt and Bach and Chopin at the same time. And so this is how you are. That's how I was. Absolutely. And because she was one of the chouchou, one of the favorites, we were sitting in the front row. So I still remember the energy of the man, the aura of the man, the, how can I say, the power radiating from him all the time. And so every time, there was a small orchestra, I was not conducting then, but there was a chamber, like 4 or 5 string musicians. And so all these conductors who were coming, professional conductors who were coming and trying, some Mozart divertimento, I still remember looking at their pants because the pants was doing like this because
Of course.
they were so scared. And he would say, nein, das ist nicht so, das ist ganz dilettant, I mean, shrieking at the top of his head. And he said, and so then he says, it goes like this. And he would just simply whisper like this, the phrasing of that Mozart first theme. And I still remember tears, I mean, completely flowing out of my, and being completely bewildered as to why. The man has just whispered a phrasing, but somehow the truth in this phrasing was so undeniable and so evident and so powerful that you felt you touched God or
What
something.
do we call that? I like that the term force of will, right? This kind of like this just a touching the almighty, whatever it is that some people just how do you describe that?
Well, I think he's of course you have to have a formidable mind and a formidable soul as well, but it's also a quest. And the I mean, he was, literally bearing us with his knowledge of, all the philosophies. He was mentioned, all that philosopher, and this. So you would go and think, oh my God, I know nothing about nothing, and Buddhist philosophy and Chinese philosophy and Indian philosophy. I mean, the man had a culture that was awesome, simply awesome. And I think the weight of that culture he brought in and sort of, there was a term called reduzieren, to reduce, to, make it one, as it were. He was able to do that and he was able to convey that. So not only in his teaching, in his conferences as well, but of course in his conducting, which was simply extraordinary.
What from his teaching have you taken and kind of applied into your own work?
Well, I worked subsequently with his disciples, like Jordi Mora in Barcelona, and so to really feel in my gesture, was there something that I can, the structure of the gesture, the impact and the resolution that he talks about all the time. How can you express that in your body? Can you? Because of course you never want to talk to an orchestra and say, you see here there is an impact and the resolution here, then you are finished. You finished. You have to really do this with your gesture, or try to do this. I'm not sure I'm always successful. And um and so so I've included that in my own body, whether or not it really is that. I have, a lifetime to improve on all of that. But and working on all the masterclasses and watching all the masterclasses and reading. She also wrote an entire book, a pedagogy entirely, which is translated now as we speak. I'm translating it with someone in English, and someone else is translating in Italian. So we will have that available, which is really great, because he has written nothing. He's written nothing. So she was able to, write all of what he's teaching and work with some of his disciples as well. So at least we have the teaching now available, which is
How important this wisdom can be passed down to the next generation through
yes,
people who were there, because
yes.
it has to be people who were there to witness it
Mm,
directly.
mm.
I had
So
a wonderful conversation with Stefan Müller on the show, and he was an assistant conductor for Von Karajan. And I'm like, what?
wow.
How did I miss that? So
Yes,
we're talking,
and
what was he like backstage? And he was very interesting. He said he was really nice to the singers backstage,
backstage. What does it mean?
but the orchestra, not nice. He would get in front of the orchestra and say, "You haven't played this right in 30 years. Today we're gonna try it."
Right. Oh, that
We had
must
a
be
we had
awesome.
a joke. I asked him what would have been like if the maestros of yesterday had social media and all the things we have to deal with today. Isn't that a fascinating thought?
Yeah, no, I think I'm sorry to say, maybe I should not be saying that, but I fear we are wasting a lot of energy on our social medias, and I've myself, being very, very, very sporadic because it is so tempting to watch this Instagram and social media and podcast this and all that. It's fascinating and for what, but then you realize what 5 hours has have gone and you've done nothing. So I realized the danger of that very much so. Yeah.
On the flip side, I've seen some singers, the Metropolitan Opera international singers, who are getting millions of followers on TikTok,
Oh God,
and
TikTok, really?
on TikTok and Instagram. And it's just amazing what some people are doing and how they're utilizing platforms. And it's this interesting balance. You can waste a lot of time. We call it the rabbit hole. You go down
Yeah.
the YouTube rabbit hole, and then it feeds you
Yes.
things you want to see, and
Yes.
that's the challenge, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. That's it. I mean, nowadays, I mean, I'm sure, what most people do is go, wake up and then go on the social medias. And, I was the assistant to Seiji Ozawa for a very, very long time. And at 4 in the morning, what was he doing? He was studying his score and memorizing his score. Yeah, I mean, until the rehearsal started, and I've seen, I've been really very close to him. I've seen him, doing a performance, throw a fabulous party, disappear quickly, and then I know that at 4 o'clock he was studying. Amazing.
Isn't that like when you look at the iceberg, the tip of the water? That's the performance. The conductor's life is a lonely one. We have to spend most of the
Very,
time studying scores,
very.
and for me, that's my favorite time in the world is sitting
Yes,
there with a Beethoven symphony or whatever symphony's coming up or an
yes,
opera's coming up, and just trying to figure out why was it that written that way.
yes, yes,
That
yes.
joy of discovery.
Yeah, yeah. And as Levine said many times, let the score speak to you. Don't go at it, let it speak to you. And I love that. And so you have this intimate relationship, and then you can really almost. I mean, I never will conduct by heart. I think it's way too scary. I mean, unless you are a genius and terribly young, or Seiji Ozawa and Abado, I wouldn't take the risk for anybody. But
That scares me in opera the most because
yes,
oh man, there's
yes.
so many pitfalls in every
Yes.
page of an opera.
Do you know? Do you know that Levine, who was a phenomenal Mozart conductor, conducted Mozart everything by heart? But he had music for what? What do you think he had the music for? All the
Verdi.
recitativi accompagnati. All of that he had for the moment, taram taram, taram taram, tum taram
Ta-da-ta-da.
taram taram, taram taram. He had the
If
score.
something's going to go wrong, it's going to be the accompagnato.
Yes, 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 yes.
Wow. So you've conducted so much in your career. You've done so much. You've a huge varied repertoire.
Mm.
What are some things that, if you're on a desert island, you could take three scores with you? What might those three be at this moment?
Okay, so it would be Tannhäuser was for me the experience of a lifetime. Uh, it has everything for me. It has the almost Wagner, which I adore. I came to opera really because of the Ring Cycle in Bayreuth, conducted by Boulez and Giraud. Everyone said in Paris, "You've got to go, you've got to go, you've got to go." So I said to my parents, I was very young then, and I said, "Okay, anyone who respects himself or herself have to go to Bayreuth." And so we went. At the time, you were still able to get tickets. They were expensive, but you could. And there we had a year. I studied every single opera. I had the orchestra score, the piano vocal, the list of all the leitmotifs, all of them, the analysis of Lavignac and other great people. And I arrived there in Bayreuth, and there the music, and I felt, okay, I have to do opera. It has to do. So Tannhäuser, Dialogue of the Carmelites, which for me, for the spirituality of it, for the genius of it, for the incredible beauty of it, really, 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 Dialogue of
I
the
think he's
Carmelites.
one of the most original composers.
Yes.
I've done the organ concerto. I've done
Uh-huh.
lots of the arias and the
Yes.
movements. And I've done the motets because I do a lot of choral music. And
Fantastic. Yeah.
there's not a bit of Poulenc that I don't find fascinating.
Yes, yes, and what's amazing about him, I mean, he's very repetitive. There's formulas, like leitmotifs from Mère Marie comes back into a song cycle. Da, da,
Even in the
da.
motets, you hear like little bits of his like key changes and the way he turns a phrase. Yeah, he
Yes,
uses
yeah,
a lot of the same devices.
yeah. But you hear 2 bars of Poulenc, and you know it's him. That is genius. That is genius for sure. Yeah, I
That's
like
two.
that.
What's the third?
So the third is one Verdi. So either Don Carlo and on an early Verdi, I think Traviata. I know it's very corny, but Traviata. Every time I come back to Traviata, I'm like amazed. Or uh, maybe Rigoletto. I mean, one of the early Verdis would be there, but certainly a Verdi. A Verdi would be in my three top choices. You know.
So now you conduct symphonic music and operatic music
Mm.
equally, and how does one inform the other?
Ah, that is a fantastic question. I really learned how to conduct with symphony. I learned to conduct, to breathe, and to follow very well because of the work in the opera. Because here, if you cannot breathe, if cannot follow, you you cannot come there. You cannot touch opera. And as a matter of fact, I'm lucky enough. Elizabeth had a conductor schedule for the Chopin concertos, and suddenly, for whatever reason, the 15 days before the recording of the two piano concertos, her conductor canceled, and so she called on me desperately, and I said, no, no, I can't do this. It's too difficult. Everyone knows the Chopin concerto are too difficult, and so she said, well, I'm going to lose so much money. The promoter is going to be mad and this and the other. You have to do it. So I did it, but I was able to do it because I listen, and that is something the opera world teaches you. Listen. But conducting an orchestra, knowing what gesture it comes from the symphony, because in the opera world you're very busy showing the chorus this and that and the other. It's about maintaining the ship. With the symphony, the ship goes by itself, basically. You give boom, and that's it. They go on. But how do you shape this? How do you do that? How do you attract their attention? How do you take a risk here and there? How do you sense? You sense also with symphony what you should not conduct. Don't conduct this because you're going to mess them up. You see the engine. I compare this with horseback riding. I did some horseback riding in
Hmm.
London, and you can sense, the horse knows you right away the moment you step on it. And so you same with the orchestra. They smell you. They know you, and so having done that, the moments where sometimes also in the opera world where just a slight bobbing of your body and the orchestra knows there's rubato there. It's just there's nothing like it, as you know, nothing like it.
Well, so tell us what's like your first time in front of the. You worked as a coach for many years a pianist and coach at the Metropolitan Opera. What
Yeah.
was like the first time you conducted a full opera at the Met?
So that was it was not the first time I conducted the full opera. The first time I conducted at the Met, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, conducted at the Met. Yeah. Well, it was very interesting. So I had conducted the Faust in Barcelona. Fortunately, I had 11 performances of Faust in my arm before that. So that was great. And then I was doing my Met debut in Faust. And this was a one-time performance, so no rehearsals with the orchestra, nothing. So I felt confident until I was in the dressing room, and until suddenly I looked at my watch, and it was 15 minutes before going on stage. And suddenly I thought, what the hell are you doing? What is, are you insane? What, and you have that moment where you feel literally you're about to fall into a precipice. Or no, not you're about to fall, you need to fall into a precipice, and then come what may, so, and then you walk and you think, oh my God. And then you step onto the podium, and then you take a bow, and you see all these wonderful musicians, and you go, okay, here we go. And you get the first go. And then there's no more time for discussion, no more time for discussion.
And do you remember like specifically when you were conducting, or does it all kind of do you become the music? What was that process like when you turned around and you finished the performance? And
Well, it felt as if, did it happen, and I was, you're high for a few days, so you don't sleep, and you keep, hearing this and hearing that, and it's and each performance is like this for me somehow. I have a hard time coming down, I had to really learn how to, okay, let go in order to sleep.
Well, it's so exciting to get make this exalted music and to bring what you have to it and to work with your colleagues. And what's it like to work with one-on-one in recital format with some of the great singers you work with? I mean, we read a few of them, just a few of the many.
Yeah.
But what's it like to have that personal collaboration with these wonderful artists?
Yeah, this is it. You see, to be able to go from one uh, sort of set of relationship to orchestra with piano, to orchestra alone, to orchestra and singing. It's like all different facets of the. And I love the intimacy. I love the intimacy of one-on-one. What. I should say one-on-one, but you should say what? I mean, the duo, the partnership. Particularly as you sense, you know, very early on, I decided that when singers gave me a tempo, I, practiced the tempo, but I knew this was not the tempo we were going to be working at, as you know very well. So I always, kept in my mind, okay, watch and sense and feel and so on and so forth. And that's what I absolutely adore, is that I am flexible enough that I can follow the singer, and I'm the happiest when the singers turn to me as if, what, you're here? Kind of thing. You were here? Oh yeah? You know, that I love that. It means that I've done my job of being really supportive and being attentive.
That's such a beautiful way to think and to be with those artists and to
Yeah.
make music together, because it's chamber music. Even the largest opera is chamber music when it comes
Yes.
down to it.
Yes. Yes.
The listening, the giving and the taking, and that's
Yes.
the magic that makes. That's one thing when I've done. I've done some Broadway musicals, and
Wonderful.
with the click tracks, that's one
Oh,
thing. That
that's
always
hard.
hurts. Or pops music with the click tracks. I'm like, oh, that's what a conductor does. Is we give
Yeah.
we provide that energy, and
Yes.
very different world. But
Yeah, that's interesting.
so, what do you think the next chapter might look like as we come out of this COVID period?
You mean for me or for the world?
Well, let's start with the world, and then let's talk about you last.
Sorry about the the
That's
door.
okay.
um, you know, I I don't fear. I don't fear the future. I feared for, in the middle of the pandemic, when I thought maybe people will get used to the format of being in your living room, of watching, all these operas. I was also imagining that maybe opera houses will no longer have performances because it's too expensive, but they would turn their opera house into studio recording, where you would have, live performance just for the show, just for the HD broadcast or whatever it is. But I don't, I see, particularly in Europe, I see how many people are flocking to concert halls, and how they are dying to go back to live music. And I think if COVID was ever a reset, is to appreciate how different live music is about, and and listening with others. There's something, and the performers. I mean, I can see, having done, Zoom concerts, how your concentration is not at all the same. I mean, you are somewhat concentrated, but the audience, the listening and the concentration of the audience, we feed off of it. We really do. And I think performers will continue need that, and I think opera houses will, and I'm sure orchestras. So it's going to be a very difficult phase for a while. But I don't think, some people say music is dead and performance is dead. I don't think so.
They've been saying that since Beethoven's time, haven't they?
Really? Yes.
Someone's always saying that, and a critic is always saying that
Mm.
music is dead or dying.
Mm.
Classical music's been dying for 200 years,
Mm.
they say.
What I believe will happen is that uh, a newly found versatility in musicians, in situations as well. We've learned to do this, on videos. So therefore, we can adapt even more. Maybe we can bring more music in smaller formats into buildings. I'm thinking into nursing homes and all the rest of that, and prisons, and something that Elisabeth Somba does a lot in Europe, and um, and so a lot of operas are going to be done in outdoor uh, places, which again is, we conductors are adapting to the fact that we have to respect this kind of social distances in the orchestra. My dear friend Mark Elder was saying that it took him a long, long time to have people so far away and not being able to listen to one another. So maybe musicians will listen more to one another. As you know, a lot of
I
them
think
will.
they'll listen more and they'll be more appreciative to be there. Just the act
Yes,
of a rehearsal is never going to
yes,
be so exciting.
yes, 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 yes. And I believe there's going to be a new, I mean, a newly found energy of appreciation, because many times you feel also musicians complaining a lot, singers complaining, oh God, I've got to go to Vienna, and I've got to go to Italy, and I've got to go to this and that. No one complains anymore. So suddenly it's going to probably feel like, wow, I'm in Vienna. Wow, I'm going to La Scala tomorrow. And yes, I'm working with a difficult conductor, but how amazing to be working live. I think there's going to be this newly new appreciation, really.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and
You're
wish you
welcome.
continued success. And thank you for sharing your words of wisdom, but also your humanity today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Thank you, Maestro.
See you soon.
Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Please like and share our videos, and remember, keep music alive.
Yes.